Welcome to a new episode of The Goth Writer. I am Anna Mocikat. I am a goth, and it is easily to spot looking at me. And I am also a writer. I have been a professional writer for over 20 years, which is why I decided to start this vlog and give some advice and some insights from my long career and maybe help out writers who are still at the beginning of the journey. So today I'm going to talk about different plots. Basically, there are two plots. There is the single plot and the multi-plot. There's also the mini-plot. I will come to that later. First things first, however, a little bit of self-promotion. This is my book. As I said, I'm a writer. I have several books out there. This is my latest one. It's called Shadow City. And if you like this video, and maybe you will like this book as well, so check it out. Okay, here in the background, one of my assistants, this is Yuri. So if we hear some noises, it's probably her because she is still a puppy and has different stuff on her mind every single day. It never gets boring with a puppy. However, so let's go back to the different plots. As I said, there is the single plot and the multi-plot, and there are advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons for using one of these two plots. I will start with the single plot because it is the most common one and it's also the easiest one. And to be completely honest and blunt from the beginning, I would strongly advise anyone who is a first-time writer or maybe writing only his second book to always use the single plot. I will explain in a moment why I think this is very important. So the single plot, the definition of it is that you tell a story out of the perspective of mostly one main character. You can jump into other perspectives, of course, but it is mostly one main character. You have a hero or anti-hero. It even can be the villain of the story, but it is one character and it's the story of this character. We tell it from the beginning till the end. Usually it's the journey of a hero, an internal or external journey. That's another thing I will talk about in another video in detail. But you have one character and that makes things actually very, very easy. And it's the most common plot, actually. If you look at most stories, most books, it's usually one main protagonist and you build up the whole world and the whole story around her or him. Whereas there is also the multi-plot. The multi-plot is, of course, as the name says, a story, a plot told from multiple perspectives. So you don't have only one main character, you usually have several of them. It can be 3, it can be 4. It can be 7, as in my book Shadow City. There are 7 main characters and 7 perspectives. So yeah, it sounds pretty cool. I have been asked many times, oh wow, that's cool. How did you do that? It is, but it is also very, very difficult. That's why I suggest when you start out, don't start out with the multi-plot. Always start out with the single plot. So, as I said before, I have been doing this for 20 years. And of course, I started out with the easier stuff and then moved up and developed and evolved and got better and got more practice. And then finally, I could write Shadow City, which is a very, very complex multi-plot. But looking back, when I was still at the beginning, a young writer, 20 years ago, I would have never been able to do this. It's just how it is. Even though, of course, I thought so, because like all young people, I thought I am much smarter than everybody else. Like we hear today, okay, boomer, so I'm not a boomer yet, but yeah, I'm one of the old people now. But back then I thought, yeah, sure, I don't need rules. Who needs rules? I'm awesome, and we young people are better than the old ones. That's basically what everybody thinks when they are 20. Fortunately, I didn't write a MultiPlot back then, so apparently I didn't try this, but I was convinced that I could do it if I only wanted, which is wrong. I couldn't have pulled it off, not at all. Of course, we would like to do it because it's something we are very, very used to, especially from TV. TV series and series are very, very popular right now. I mean, they weren't as popular 20 years ago as they are now, and we have so much excellent stuff on TV, meanwhile, better than most movies. You can see at the movie theater, in my opinion. So we know the multiplots from there, because a typical series is always told from the perspective of many characters. Usually the story intertwines in a way. And yeah, of course, this is cool. This is something we would like to do, and we think, well, they can do it, we can do it as well. Which is, unfortunately, as I said before, not as easy. So the MultiPlot, I mean, probably one of the best examples for that is Game of Thrones, the TV show, as well as the books. But if you look at the books, I don't even know how many characters are there from the perspective, at least 10. It's told at least from the perspective of 10 different characters. So first of all, I think George R. Martin is a genius, which I don't want to offend anyone. Maybe you are a genius. I am not a genius, so I couldn't pull that off in the way he does. But he also has been doing this for a very, very long time. This dude is over 60. I don't know how old he is. 65, maybe almost 70, and he has been doing it all his life. Like me, he used to work for movie and TV earlier, so he used to be a screenwriter. That's how he learned the craft of writing. That's something which comes in quite handy, that you're a screenwriter first, and then you try to write a multiplot. However, so this is his masterpiece, and he has been working on it for a long time, and it is extremely complex, and he can do it. Most of us can't do it in the way he does. The difficulty of a multiplot is that you need to tell the story from multiple point of views, of course, but every single character needs their own unique plot, their unique story. So it's basically like a single plot. You have one hero's journey, but you do it for every single character, and then you have to intertwine the whole thing and make it so it makes sense. And in the end, everything should come together somehow. So this is quite difficult. And here we are at the last episode, where I've been talking about plotters versus pantsers. So if you say, okay, I want to do it, I want to write a multiplot, after all, Anna can do it, so I can do it as well. Good. Do it. It's a lot of fun. Here is my very, very important advice for that. Don't be a pantser. Again. Because in my opinion, in my experience, it's almost impossible to write a good, complex multiplot story when you're a pantser. You will really get into hell when you try that, because you will start writing all these perspectives, and then suddenly you will get at a point where you don't really know where everything is going and why and how to bring everything together. And sometimes it comes together somehow, but sometimes you will have a very hard time. And maybe you will even scrap the whole project because you don't know how to continue, and you get tired of it and gets too complicated. So when you want to write a multiplot, it's really important that you plan it in advance. And I would do it rather thoroughly. I would plan the whole story, where the story goes from the beginning to the end. So you know where the story will be, how it ends when you start writing the very first sentence. And you do the same for the multiple perspectives, for the multiple characters. So you have, like I have in my book, I have the guy Colton. He's one of the main characters, and he shows up out of the nowhere and has no memory of who he is and where he came from, and we will see his whole story, his whole development, where he discovers who he is and what he is and what will happen to him. This will happen over all 3 books, all the trilogy. So this is one story which is going from the beginning till the end. But I also have other characters. So I have Vincent, who is who's an entity from another world that occupies the body of a fallen soldier, and he has his very own agenda why he's here. We don't really know. Is he one of the good guys? Is he one of the bad guys? What does he want? We will discover his journey and why he is here, what he wants to do from the beginning till the end. And then there is Eurydice, who is the villain of the story, and she's also one of the main characters. I tell a lot from her perspective. And it's the same with her. She starts out as the really totally badass, ice-cold villain. And the further we go in the story, the more we will discover that there is so much more into her. And in the end, she will be very important for the conclusion of the whole big picture. So that's just an example, and that's just a little bit how I work. So I made up the storyline for every single one of them from the beginning till the end. And then when you write the MultiPlot, it's a little bit like a puzzle. You put the pieces together and think, okay, so this chapter should be from the perspective of this guy, and the next chapter will be of the perspective of this guy, and so on. And you look how the puzzle works. You always can still change the pieces and take something further in the story and put something more back. That's always something you can decide later. You can really play with the puzzle, but you will have to put up like a puzzle of the different characters on one string. It has to be one long string, of course, and you put the pieces together, and everything needs to make sense. The whole big story needs to make sense, and the story of every single character needs to make sense, which is kind of complicated. So when you're a pantser, that's what I mean, it's almost impossible to pull that off. And George R. R. Martin is a plotter too. Of course he is. I mean, he comes from TV after all, and that's how we learn writing there as plotting. So much to the multiplot right now. I want to come back to the single plot and say again why it is so much easier. So all I told you now about the string and the puzzles you're putting together and so on, you don't have that in the single plot. So if I should take a very famous example, that would be, for example, the Hunger Games. We all have seen the movies. Many of us have read the books. They're great books. And they're completely told of the perspective of one character, and we discover the whole world and the whole big story of 3 books from the perspective of this one character. And it's also written in the first person, which I will come back to in another episode. Why first person versus third person, and so on. So this is how the very classic single plot is made. It is a very classic hero's journey. As I said earlier, it can be a journey to themselves, but it also can be a journey to becoming something else, becoming the hero, saving the world, whatever. I mean, you can write whatever you want, because there are no limits to your imagination. So the single plot, if you're writing the first book, maybe the second book, do the single plot. Please do yourself a favor, make a single plot. And here I want to talk about one writing rule, which is actually one of my very, very favorite writing rules ever. It's the KISS rule. KISS. Nothing to do with the band, which is awesome. KISS means keep it simple, stupid. So that doesn't mean that you're stupid, but it means that keeping things as simple as possible when writing a story is a very, very good thing. It doesn't mean that your story needs to be trivial or boring or dull or whatever. Not at all. Simple stories can be really, really good. Look at, again, at the Hunger Games. In the end, it is a very simple story. Broke down to a very, very simple plot and storyline. But it's a fantastic story. It's great. It was a big success. So keep it simple, stupid. It also applies to many, many things, like I will talk about that also in another episode, show don't tell and stuff like that. That's very awesome. It's very important to also keep these rules in mind. But the KISS rule should always be in your head, because if you can make things simpler, it's always better. And it can be simple and complex at the same time. So, as I said, it doesn't mean that it has to be simple in a bad way, but keep it simple, stupid. And keep it simple for yourself when you write your first book. Write the book, write the story of one character, and let us readers, dogs, let us readers discover your story from the point of view of your character, of your, most of the time, it's your favorite character. Do that. That's my big advice for you for that. Before I finish, I want to say one more thing, because at the beginning I said there are 3 kinds of plots. We have the single plot, we have the multi-plot, and we have the mini-plot. Don't ever write the mini-plot. That's why I don't want to talk about it too much. The mini-plot appears mostly in movies, less in books. Mini-plot is, to give you an example, all the movies of David Lynch, for example. Awesome, great, but you need to be a big artist to be able to write something like that and make it work. A mini-plot usually doesn't have a main plot. It is a multi-plot. It is similar to the multi-plot. It has multiple characters and their perspectives, but it usually, that's why it's called mini-plot, it usually doesn't have one huge story arc where everything is put together. So it's extremely difficult to make that work and make that interesting for the reader or the viewer, and there are only very, very few people on this planet who can pull that off and make it work. You can tell me, okay, Boomer, I will do a mini plot and it will be a bestseller. Please go ahead. Tell me how it went for you. And but maybe in a couple of years, when you have written several books and you feel like it, then why not write an amazing epic multi-plot? Write even a mini plot. Maybe you will be the next David Lynch. Who knows? So much from me for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you think I know what I'm talking about, maybe you want to check out my book. So a little bit of self-promotion again. I'm Anna Mocikat. I am the Goth Writer, and I will be back next month with another episode where I will talk about writing and a writer's life and whatever you want. Subscribe to my channel if you're interested. Otherwise, happy writing.